Hi friends, welcome to Harmony Hills Home and Garden. I'm Jenny and we garden here in Baltimore, Maryland, Zone 7. Today's project is a houseplant project. I have these two beautiful African violets that I picked up at Homestead Gardens in Davidsonville, Maryland about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And since then they've been sitting in the pots that they came in from the nursery. And it's time to get them into some pots that are more decorative and give them a little bit more room to spread out and grow. So come with me and let's pot up these African violets. African violets are a tropical plant and they naturally grow in the crevices of trees where they don't really have a whole lot of soil and they have a pretty humid environment and a lot of rainfall, but then the rain falls away from their roots and leaves the roots to dry out just the tiniest little bit, even in the humid air, before the next rain comes. So we want to simulate that kind of environment for African violets by, number one, placing them in a very well draining soil. You do not want to have water sitting on the roots of this plant for long periods of time. You really want to allow the water to go onto the roots, pass by the roots, let the roots soak up the water as it passes, but then the water should drain out of the soil and move along with its life and then allow a lot of oxygen in the soil to get up to those roots as well. So freely draining soil, lots of drainage, so important. Also, you want to kind of have a humid environment around them if you can swing it. If you live in a dry climate or if your house is very dry, one way you can do this is to set the pot of African violets into a shallow tray into which you fill some pebbles and then some water and have a standing water around them, and that will evaporate up onto the leaves and create a little bit more humid environment than the natural surroundings might be. With regard to plant care, there's a lot of folklore out there that says that you should not touch the leaves, much less get water on the leaves. The idea being that the leaves have these little fine hairs which are very delicate and sensitive to being disturbed. And water on the leaves turns into spots on the leaves, which turn into either a rotting situation or just a discoloration that's unsightly. I did find, though, that there was an online African violet specialist nursery, and their website said that the water on the leaves is not a huge deal. You just don't want to always be drenching the roots with water, but you can get water on the leaves and they'll be just fine. But still, I don't plan to be rough with these leaves. The stems are very delicate, easy to break, so I'm going to take care to try to not break the leaves or the stems, and I'm going to try to keep away from touching or bothering the leaves too much, although I'm not going to be like super particular about it. I will take just general care as I'm potting. Let's talk a little bit more about the potting mix. As I said, you want to have very freely draining potting mix. Regular houseplant potting mix that you get out of a bag is going to retain too much moisture for African violets. So if that's all you have, then what I recommend for you to do is to take equal parts of that potting mix that you use on your other houseplants and combine it with equal part of coarse sand or vermiculite or perlite or horticultural grit, something that is going to lighten up that soil and allow the water to pass through. Today, the pots that I'm using already have soil in them. It's been used. I'm going to recycle it, but at first I'm going to dump out this soil, mix it in with a lot of vermiculite and perlite, and that's going to dramatically lighten up the soil. And then for fertilization purposes, I'm going to be using an African violet specific plant fertilizer. I mix it into my water, and then when I water the African violets, the nutrients are in the water. It's not an organic method. If that matters to you, then I bet you could do some searches and find some organic methods to fertilize your African violets. I've read, I think, that earthworm castings are a good way to organically feed your African violets. So with that said, let's just get into it. Let me get my materials together. All right, this is my bucket that had potting soil in it from other projects that I've done. And as you might be able to see, it is bone dry. So first I'm going to dump this old soil into here. These pots are great. They're handmade. They are very porous, so they do allow oxygenation of the roots of whatever is planted in here. This one's nice and tall and deep too, so I could grow something that has really deep roots in it, but I don't think that the violets actually require a pot this deep. I just like the look of it and the shape of it. So this potting soil is just regular potting soil that I got out of a bag some time ago, and the roots of the old plant are still in here. Let me get that out of there. All right, so it's very dry, and it's going to need water, but first I'm going to put in more perlite and vermiculite. The vermiculite that I have is an Espoma brand. I bought it last year for seed starting. It's a fine-grained one. Put that in there. And the perlite I have is the one that I bought at Valley View Farms when I went there last week. I haven't even opened it yet, but this doesn't have any nutrient value in it. I do have some perlite that's got some Miracle Grow fertilizer in it, but I think I want the one with no fertilizer. Two of these scoops, which are each 2 cups. So 4 cups of perlite, 2 cups of vermiculite in with this soil. So hopefully you can see the soil is now much, much looser with all that perlite in there. And the little gray blotches that you can see are the vermiculite. And so I think this soil is going to be much better draining. But I think I'm still going to add even more perlite. I'm just doing this on a gut feel. Something that I read said equal parts perlite and potting soil. Okay, I'm going to pre-moisten this soil a little bit. It shouldn't hold as much water as it would have if it was just all potting mix. But I do want to have some moisture in the soil when I plant these plants into it, but I don't want it to be soaking. So I've only added, I think I added about 1 cup just now, and already you can see that the potting mix part of it is sticking to my hands. And I think this is going to be nice. Kind of an evenly moist, damp soil, but it's not super wet. Barely holds together when I squeeze it. So I think that that's going to be enough. I'm just going again on my gut feel here. So I have the soil mixed up here. I can see in the old potting soil from these pots that there is some leftover slow release fertilizer. These little gold balls. That's basically Osmocote or something similar to Osmocote. Okay, so next I'm going to be putting this soil into my pots. I like to use a piece of paper towel or paper napkin. You could use a coffee filter. Just something to go down in the bottom of the pot to cover the drainage holes so that my fine soil doesn't fall out. See there. All right. Now I'm just going to put the soil into the container. And what I'm going to do is take the plant out of its pot. You can see how dry that is. And I'm going to set the pot in here and fill the soil around it so that I know that it'll be easier to plant the pot into here. Because I don't want to damage the leaves too much. And I find that this method is the easiest way that I know of to plant up something that came in a pot while protecting the plant from too much either root disturbance, which could be an issue, or leaf damage. Something that grows low to the soil, like an African violet, it's super easy to damage the leaves, and I don't want to do that. So I'm tamping the soil down in there somewhat firmly. I'm hoping that when I remove this pot, it will hold the hole in place. It might not do a great job of it, though, because the soil isn't super, super wet. But let's see. There we go. That worked really nicely. Now I should be able to just set this right down in there and tamp the soil up against the root ball without any damage to the leaves. That's my goal. Yeah, that worked like a charm. Awesome. I'm going to just set this aside. I'll deal with the watering of it in just a minute. I want to do the next one in the same way. So that was a really easy way to get those plants into this soil without breaking any of the leaves. So far, so good. Now I need to water. Okay, I currently don't own a watering can that has a small spout on it. If I did, I could probably fit the small spout right in here in between these leaves, and I would be able to get the water into the plant area, into the root area, without disturbing any of the leaves. I don't own one of those. And in general, you kind of want to bottom water your African violets anyway. That will help the roots go down toward the water instead of staying up higher in the soil. So I think I'm going to just use a humidity dome. You can use any container, any flat bottom container for this purpose. But I'm going to put my pots into here and just let them have a bath and let them soak up water from the bottom. Now this water that I got out of the tap is a little bit warmer than room temperature. It's not hot water. It's not even, I wouldn't even call it warm water. It's just barely more than lukewarm. So I'm going to pour this into this container and allow the pots to sit in here and soak up water for as long as it takes for the top of the soil to become evenly moist. Now you may remember that the root balls of these violets were very dry when I put them into this soil. So there's actually room for a lot of water to go up into there and get the roots nice and moist. But then as soon as it'll probably be about an hour that I'll leave them in here. I'm going to check on them in a half hour, and in about an hour I'll take them out of the water and put them onto their saucers and take them up into the sunroom. Now, for light requirements, you want your African violets to be in indirect bright light. If you have very direct light on them, it may burn their leaves. Also, they may start to grow toward that direct light. So you may find that you need to spin your pots a little bit every now and again just to keep them from stretching toward the light too much. I have African violets in my living room window, which is west facing, but it's got a lace curtain on it, and so it's filtered light for those violets. And then the ones that go into the sunroom, I've got on a tiered plant stand, and they're down on the lower tiers, so they're shaded by the taller plants on the upper layers of the plant stand. So they get bright indirect light in a room with west facing and south facing windows, and they should thrive there. I see that I have a couple of flowers on here that could be groomed off, but other than that, I'm really happy with how these look. I'm excited to have more violets in my life again, as I've told you in, I think, the live video that I did a month ago or so. I told you that I don't have great luck with African violets. I've killed more than I've had live, but I'm hoping that these will prove me wrong, prove that I can take care of African violets. I think what I did before, the ones that I killed, I think I kept them too wet. So we'll see if this lighter mix of soil helps them at all. With regard to fertilization, this is Schultz brand African Violet Liquid Plant Fluid Plus Micronutrients. And let's see, it's an 8-14-9 NPK fertilizer. It's meant for African violets and other plants in the African violet family. Recommended for use with all types of water and potting soil. 7 drops of fertilizer per 1 quart of water every time you water. Water from top to bottom. Avoid wetting leaves. So this is recommending you top water when you fertilize. So I don't know if I'm going to do that or if I'm going to follow more of a bottom watering method. I'm just going to wait and see on that. But I'm going to go ahead and add some fertilizer to this water that I've got going here. And hopefully that will feed these plants and get them off to a nice good start. Let me mix that together a little bit. There we go. All right, so I'm going to come back in a half hour, check on them, and I anticipate that within an hour, hopefully less than an hour, they will be fully watered. But if not, I'm going to leave them in there until I feel that the top of the soil in the root ball is moistened. So I'll be back in touch with you when the time has passed. Okay, folks, we're back. It's about 45 minutes since I last was here with you. And they've been soaking for all that time. I can see that the level of the water in the dish has gone down, so I know that some of it has soaked up. And you can actually see it coming up the sides of the pots as well. So that leads me to believe that they're probably not wet yet, fully hydrated. So let me just... Yeah, the top of the soil is not yet wet. So they have not yet soaked all the way up through the soil to the root balls. Yeah. All right, so it's been about 45 minutes so far. I'm going to add more water so that there's plenty for it to access. And I'm going to let them soak for another couple of hours at least until I need to make sure that the root balls, which went in pretty dry, get moistened. So I may end up top watering a little bit just to get some water up at the top root zone quicker. But for sure, over time, I'm going to bottom water as my main method. And hopefully I won't kill these African violets like I have killed so many others. If you are an African violet aficionado, please tell me what I might be doing wrong in this video. And also share your ideas and what works for you and your garden. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again in another video real soon. Take care, friends.